Just like we do, but no, they don't. Make your check come as they make. Disrespect us, no, they won't. All right. Welcome, welcome.
I'm ready to keep dancing. That was great. All right.
Welcome to the session.
Who's here today? This is oh my gosh, we're on day 10. So hold tight. We have a lot to do today at 5 and then tonight at 7. So get ready. How we doing? People are rolling in.
There's Nancy Barber.
All
from
right.
Allen County.
Trudy Berry. Hi, Trudy from Londonburg. Oh, Melvina's here. Hi,
Melvina from Florida.
Hi. Wow. Jeffrey Jacobs, you're back again. Awesome to see you in the room. Ellen Baycock. Hey, Ellen from Lexington, Virginia. Diane Dresder from Chantilly.
And people from Hampton Roads. So
Darlene Walker. Kelly. Hi, Kelly from.
Hey, I think Rosanna gets it again. Peterson from North Dakota.
Hey, Susan Stillman. Hi, Susan. Sierra Club. How about that? Carol Rogers. Hey, Carol. From DC, from the Women's National Democratic Club. Carol's always a big champion of the women's.
Del Moore made it on.
All right.
So what do you think, Catherine? Are we ready to get started?
Well, maybe another. Looks like they're rolling in. It's 5 o'clock somewhere, so get in your seats. We have quite a program. So let's do our housekeeping, and then we can get to business. How about that?
Sounds good. All right, so here we are in the second to last session here at the Women's Summit. Just a really quick housekeeping one. Remember, the Women's Summit is a community of mutual respect and open-mindedness, and we have a zero tolerance for harassment. This evening, put your questions in the Q&A kiosk and your comments in the chat. We want to keep this a running conversation. And like every session, this session is being recorded and should be available shortly after we finish for you to view it again. We want to thank all our sponsors for being there with us throughout this event. Our main sponsors, Campaign for a Family-Friendly Economy, Win Virginia and Virginia Our Way, all of our partners, and of course, our supporters. Today, we're going to see a short piece from the Campaign for the Family-Friendly Economy, a topic we will be talking about this evening.
Hi, I'm Monica, and I believe Virginia needs paid leave and paid sick days because it helps us build a stronger economy and build financial resiliency for working families. I support paid leave because no one should have to choose between caring for their family and providing for them. The COVID-19 outbreak has shown why it's past time for this common sense policy for hardworking families here in Virginia. I urge lawmakers, please support this common sense policy of paid leave and paid sick days. Virginia families need it, and Virginia families deserve it. And to Virginians, I urge you to join us in this fight for paid leave and paid sick days so we can truly have a family-friendly economy for everyone here in Virginia.
And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Catherine to get us rolling.
Woohoo! All right, I'm excited and so stoked because it's day 10. So welcome everybody. Great to see you all in the room. I'm Catherine White, Program Director at Network Nova, and I'm really excited and so satisfied to announce to everybody we are at day 10 of the Women's Summit Experience, and what an experience it has been. And today we are at letter E. It looks like it's backwards, but anyways, the letter E is today is about empowerment and elections. It's all about electing leaders who reflect our values and enact policies that uplift us all. And tonight, you will not want to miss tonight's finale at 7 o'clock. And it will all be about electing people again, because all the candidates will be in the room, and it will be just too much fun. So do not miss it. So we hope to see you in the room then. And tonight's session, we're so excited. It's Black Women Lead. And you know, in Virginia, we have been leading the way, and the power of women is creating revolutionary change, not only in this election, but in 2021. Virginia will feature 2 women of color in the race for Virginia, for governor, and woo for us, we're in the room tonight. We are shining the light for democracy, good for us. We have an excellent program in store for you, so let's get it started. First, by introducing the moderators and hosts of the session, Lisa Sales and Krista Jones. Welcome, ladies. I will be placing their bios in the chat because both women are just incredible and their bios are extensive. But I will say a few comments about each one. First, Lisa, she is chairwoman of the Fairfax County Commission for Women, which advises the Board of Supervisors on policies and initiatives to promote gender equality and eliminate violence against women and honor women and girls. She sits on the Fairfax County Council to End Domestic Violence. She's just such a champion of women, I have to say. She is a member of the Public Policy Committee for the Virginia Sexual and Domestic Violence Action Alliance and on the board of directors at Good Shepherd Housing. Lisa is a National Medical Reserve Corps volunteer, and she also served on the leadership team of the Virginia Ratify campaign. Go figure, right? She is currently a management and strategy consultant at Booz Allen Hamilton. And Krista Jones is of course part of also the Women's Summit team and has been involved in programming, and she has committed her life to public service, developing leaders and changing lives. She was named one of Leadership Arlington's top 40 under 40, and she's also featured on Ebony magazine as a hero next door. Krista has served as Director of Outreach for 2 members of Congress, designing outreach strategies, developing relationships with key community leaders, and communicating their legislative agenda with over 20 congressional events. And she also served in the Peace Corps in Paraguay. She has served in leadership roles for several local, state, and national organizations. And she's a graduate of the Sorensen Institute of Political Leadership and the Women's Campaign School at Yale. So that was just the short abridged version, but just to let you know. So you are in good hands for this session, and I'm going to hand it right over to this powerhouse team. Thank you, ladies. Take it away.
All righty. Well, welcome, everyone. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. What a week, what a month we've had. LGBTQ plus rights, DACA rights, and now abortion rights preserved yesterday with that SCOTUS decision. Thank you for that, Chief Justice John Roberts. And if that wasn't enough, we've had 2 of my favorites announce their run for governor, and how lucky are we to have them both with us to close out the final panel of this incredible Women's Summit. Hi, as you heard, my name is Lisa Sales. I'm the chairwoman of the Fairfax County Commission for Women, here with Krista Jones of Vote Lead Impact. And we will be your co-hosts, but really this means we are leaving it all up to these lovely half-dozen ladies. Over the past few months to prepare for this session, we've had the pleasure of working with these bright young women, leaders in their communities in their own right. They developed the questions on their own. They inspired what I know will be an excellent conversation. First, I would like to introduce our elected officials, and then I will turn it over to Krista to introduce our incredible young women moderators, all of whom have just graduated high school and are headed to college in the fall. Whether that be virtual or not, we just don't know, but we wish them the best of luck as they embark on their bright future. All righty. Delighted to have Senator Mamie Locke, a native of Jackson, Mississippi. Mamie has lived on the Virginia Peninsula for nearly 40 years. She's a professor of political science at Hampton University. Mamie was struck by the inequity of decisions made by the Hampton City Council, and so what did she do? She decided to run for office to make a difference. In 1996, she was elected to the City Council, served as vice mayor, and then became the first African-American woman to be elected mayor in the city of Hampton. In 2003, Mamie became only the 3rd African-American woman ever to win a seat in the Senate of Virginia. Let's see. Representing the 2nd District, she has been a strong advocate for education, women's rights, affordable housing, an increased minimum wage, and equity in the criminal justice system. I can't wait to see what comes out of this upcoming special session in Richmond on exactly this topic. Mamie sits on a number of committees and boards and is a Silver Life member of the NAACP. She is also a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated and has published articles and book chapters on the issues of gender and race in politics. As an elected representative, Mamie believes she has a responsibility to improve the lives of those she serves. Senator Jennifer McClellan, as a daughter of community leaders and educators raised in the segregated South during the Depression, Jennifer was raised with a strong sense of servant leadership and a calling to strengthen her community. Her family's experience and her study of history taught her that government can either be a force for progressive change to solve problems or a force of oppression that benefits a select few. At a young age, Jen dedicated herself to ensuring government was that force of change for all. For most of her life, Jen has channeled those values into her commitment for progress, equity, and justice in the Commonwealth. Do you see a theme here? She has implemented those values as a leader in the community, the Democratic Party, and in her over 14 years of service as a legislator in the Virginia General Assembly. Jen gets things done. She has been a driving force for progressive change in Virginia, leading the passage of landmark laws to invest in education, grow small business, expand access to healthcare, ban discrimination and inequity, safeguard workers' rights and voting rights, reform the criminal justice system, and protect a woman's right to choose, and tackle climate change. Jen lives in Richmond with her husband, David Mills, and their two children, Jackson and Samantha. Maybe we'll get a little spot of the kids today. Delegate Jennifer Carroll Foy, a native of Petersburg, Virginia, Jennifer has dedicated her life to serving others. As one of the first African-American women to graduate from the Virginia Military Institute, a foster mom, a magistrate judge, and public defender, Jennifer embodies the ideals of community, honor, and commitment in every facet of her life. During her time in the legislature, Jennifer led Virginia's effort to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment, passed legislation to combat Virginia's teacher shortage, and proudly supported the successful fight to expand Medicaid to 400,000 Virginians. She is a proud mother to twin 2-year-olds, Alex and Xander, and wife to husband Jeff, whom she met her very first week at VMI. It was really a joy to pull this session together for you all today. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Krista to introduce our panelists. Over to you, Krista, to introduce our young moderators.
Thank you, Lisa, for introducing our elected officials. I'm excited to present our panel moderators. You can see these ladies in action on these next slides. Each of these ladies works hard and all make it a priority to give back to their communities. Next slide. Joy Coleman. Joy Coleman recently graduated from Maggie Walker High School and will be attending George Mason University in the fall. She has worked with Girls for a Change throughout her high school years, helping to empower young Black girls and spread the message of the organization. She has also interned with the Office of Senator McClellan and been able to see the effect that local government has on communities. She loves being able to help people and is constantly grateful for being in a position where she can reach others through her words. Joy is passionate about using her voice to make change. Next slide. Kayla Rothstein. Kayla Rothstein is currently serving as the student representative on the Fairfax County Commission for Women. She worked on community outreach for young women through engagement events, sat on the Women's History Committee, and accepted the 2019 Women's History Month proclamation from the school board and the Board of Supervisors. As a senior at West Springfield High School, Kayla serves as the student director of the choir department. She is a passionate volunteer of the special needs community as the president of Buddies Club and founder of a store on wheels to teach special education students job skills and create an inclusive school community. Kayla is a repeat summer intern for Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee of Texas, co-president of her school's Girl Up, and president of English Honor Society. And there's actually a lot more, we just didn't include it here. Next year, Kayla will attend the University of Michigan to study public policy, economics, and Spanish. She hopes to advocate for workplace equity for women and people with disabilities here and abroad. Next slide. Genesis Holland. Genesis Holland is a recent graduate of Maggie L. Walker's Governor's School. She has volunteered and worked with many different organizations, specializing in aiding students and young children, including Girls for a Change. She is a skilled speaker and enjoys using speaking to help expand the thinking of herself and others. She will be attending George Mason University in the fall, where she plans to double major in journalism and international relations. She plans to be an international investigative journalist so that she can pursue truth and justice for those who have been wrongly accused. She plans to travel because she believes seeing the world helps one form educated opinions and views that can then be shared. As you can see, we have such talent on this panel today, and I can't wait to hear more from these young ladies. And with that, over to you to get it started, Kayla. Next slide.
Hi, our first topic is paid family medical leave. Hi, Senator Locke. May you please explain the importance of paid family and medical leave, or PFML, to workers and how you'd like to see that implemented in the state?
Hi, Kayla, and thank you for the question, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. The opening video featured Monica, and I think Monica absolutely answered that and the need for paid family medical leave. In Virginia, people both work and provide care to loved ones. And that in and of itself tells us why we need paid family medical leave. The vast majority of working people in the United States do not have paid family leave due to their jobs. So in Virginia, even unpaid leave under FMLA, which is the Federal Family and Medical Leave Act, is inaccessible to the majority of people who are working. So it's very important that we have PFML to be implemented in Virginia so that people will no longer be caught between having to leave their job and their family responsibilities. So why would they have to do that? So it's very important that people be able to take care of their families in addition to having to work. So that's why it's vitally important that we have paid family medical leave.
Thank you, Senator. Over to you, Genesis, for the next question.
Well, I just want to start off by saying this panel is intimidating to look at because it's so amazing, and the audience is equally as enthusiastic. But Senator McClellan, this question's for you. What are the negative consequences of people not having adequate paid family and medical leave during the COVID-19 pandemic? And do you think these could have been avoided had policy been in place?
Thank you, Genesis. I do think that some of these consequences could have been avoided if paid family medical leave was in place. You know, we have too many workers, particularly essential workers, who have to choose between caring for their loved ones, caring for themselves, or going to work. And we have seen with COVID, as contagious as it can be, even early on when you have symptoms, if someone gets sick and they don't have paid family medical leave and they have to go to work, they also are stuck that if they don't go to work, they can't pay their bills. And for too many people, they aren't eligible for unemployment compensation if they did decide they're not going to go to work and they're going to give up their job. In particular, a lot of our essential workers, like domestic workers, we have over 60,000 domestic workers in the Commonwealth. Over half of them are women of color, and they are on the front lines in keeping us safe and keeping our homes, and in some cases, our workplaces clean so that other people don't get sick. And yet they're forced to choose. Am I going to go to work if I'm sick and potentially infect someone else? Or if my child or my husband or my parent are sick and I can't stay home and take care of them, and if I choose to stay home and take care of them and lose my job as a result, domestic workers are ineligible for unemployment compensation. So that's just one example of where we put people in a position where they have to choose between their health, the health of a loved one, and paying their bills. It's unacceptable. And I think had paid family medical leave been in place, they wouldn't have had to deal with that with COVID. But let's not forget all of the other things that happen that cause you to have to need leave, whether it's having a child, whether it's caring for a sick parent or a sick husband, at the beginning of life or at the end of life. That's all still happening. And so that compounds what we're seeing with COVID. And I think all of this could have been alleviated had we had paid family medical leave in place.
All right, thank you so much for sharing that. Ooh, powerful. Joy, you're up next to ask the final question in this category.
Hi, Delegate Carol Foy. What positive benefits does PFML bring to the people? For example, assistance with elderly loved ones or those experiencing mental health issues, etc.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Joy. One of the reasons why I decided to carry paid family medical leave and championed it and came very close to getting it passed is because I've seen up close and personal how it can help. And so paid family medical leave will not only allow for people to care for a new child, but also a dying or elderly parent if you are sick yourself or your spouse, and to also help service members. So if you have a service member who is having some type of serious medical issue, then paid family medical leave will give you the ability to not have to decide between your family or your paycheck. And that's what this is really all about. And so I know during my election in 2017, I became pregnant with twins, and I was pregnant during my entire campaign, and I was still able to win. But I had to be hauled back to work right after giving birth because as a public defender, we have very limited leave, and actually it was disability and not paid family medical leave. So having to leave my babies in the hospital in the NICU for 4 months when they needed me the most, that is a tragedy here in Virginia. And these are the type of decisions that everyday women have to face every single day. So paid family medical leave will help address the gender gap, because women are not only the majority of your service workers who don't have access to paid family medical leave, but also we're the predominant caregivers, caring for our elderly parents. And when a child becomes sick and taking up most of the chores and the household duties, I mean, we are the ultimate caregivers. So it will help affect the gender gap. And not only that, but the racial gap also. Whereas predominantly brown and Black communities make up the majority of the women in the service industries who don't have access to job protections like this. And that's why I'm fighting very hard to make sure that Virginia is not only the #1 place to do business, but also one of the best places to live, work, and raise a family. And one of the ways to do that is by implementing paid family medical leave.
Thank you so much. That was a really good answer. Would any of you like to comment on any of the questions before we move on to the next topic? Otherwise, it's back to you, Genesis.
All right, so the next topic or the next couple questions are going to focus on maternal and child health. So, Senator Locke, maternal and infant mortality rates are highest for African Americans. Why are these numbers so disproportionate, and what steps can we take to close that gap?
Oh, great question. The reasons for this number being so high has been debated for decades. And there is this Black-white divide in both infant and maternal mortality. And we can look at any number of reasons for this. There's this inescapable atmosphere of societal and systemic racism as part of the reason. There's this toxic environment where there's stress that results in conditions like hypertension for women of color, particularly African American women. I was reading a story that was so tragic of this woman in New Orleans who kept trying to tell her physician that she was having these symptoms and these issues, and he just wouldn't listen to what she was trying to tell him, that she was having these problems and these issues, and she ended up losing her baby as a result, because he said that he had these plans for a vacation, and that he had scheduled her for a C-section because on his, not what was in her best interest. And so she was in the stage of pre-eclampsia. And ultimately, that's why she lost her baby. And these are the things that ultimately lead to high rates of infant and maternal mortality among African American women. And these higher incidences of pervasive and longstanding racial bias in healthcare. And if nothing else, what this pandemic has demonstrated is this pervasive bias in healthcare that was already there, but it has been uncovered even more as a direct result of the pandemic. So what has happened is a dismissal of these legitimate concerns and symptoms that Black women may tell their healthcare providers, but they simply don't listen. They're dismissed as these problems evolve and develop, and this has led to the higher rate of infant mortality and death. So there are a lot of things that can be done about it, in addition to simply listening to what the woman is telling you, and more access to healthcare. And thanks to my buddy there, Delegate Carol Foy, we were able to carry some legislation this past session dealing with doulas, and which was passed. And this woman in New Orleans got pregnant a second time, and she had the assistance of a doula in the second pregnancy. And this was very helpful to her because she said, at the very least, I had somebody there who could hold my hand and simply listen to me and walk me through this pregnancy, and understand what I was going through and understand these symptoms that I was feeling as I went through this second pregnancy. And so this doula, this trained companion, and her doula happened to have been a labor and delivery nurse as her career, and just opted to be a doula as her secondary career. And doulas are individuals who will simply help a woman through childbirth, help them even through a miscarriage, help them through stillbirths or any kind of reproductive experiences. And this is just one more step that can also help women and limit the number of infant mortalities and even maternal mortalities that we're experiencing.
All right, Senator, I know when you started talking, I was like, ooh, she's telling us that this topic is something we could talk about for hours. And I believe you, because I could talk about it for hours. But thank you so much for sharing that, because it is an unfortunate reality. And over to you, Kayla, to follow up with our next topic, or our next.
Senator McClellan, do you think providing education and sharing information with young women before pregnancy occurs could significantly help lower maternal and infant mortality rates? What can we do to assure more effective prenatal care is provided?
That's a great question, Kayla. The short answer is yes. And that's why we have fought for so many years to make sure that we had accurate, comprehensive family sorry, I just had a brain freeze. the family life education in school, because a lot of times what we get is just not comprehensive. It's not accurate. It doesn't paint a real picture of what happens. You know, first of all, how you get pregnant. You'd be surprised that so many of our school divisions still have abstinence only education. And so you have a lot of girls and boys who just don't fully understand biologically. Here is what happens when you have sex. Here's what happens when you get pregnant. Here is what happens when you deliver. Here's what happens, through nursing. And it's not too young to tell that. People don't realize you can be pregnant as young as 10. And believe it or not, there are kids who are sexually active at 10 because no one's really explained to them what they're doing. And the consequences of that. And so, but what's also important is making sure that at each step along the way, particularly once a young woman is deciding she does want to be sexually active, she does perhaps want to be a mother, she needs to have access to prenatal care to make sure that her pregnancy is safe, and she's educated about every step of the way what could happen. Pregnancy, while it is one of the most natural conditions, is also a very dangerous condition. And I remember when I was pregnant for the first time, and we all fully understand and know our bodies, but we don't necessarily understand the changes that our bodies are going through when we're pregnant. And we don't fully understand what's normal and what's not. So it's important that you have access to prenatal care, that you have access to that information so that when something is wrong, you know it immediately and know to call somebody. With my second child, I had placenta previa. I had no idea what that was, but because I was able to work with my doctor to explain to me, here's what it is, here are all of the consequences. When I woke up one morning and started bleeding, I knew exactly what happened. And I knew that I had to call the doctor, get to the hospital, or else both my baby and I were going to die. Had I not known all of the risks, I might have thought, this is normal, because it started out, it didn't look like it was anything wrong. There's sometimes bleeding that occurs that is normal, but you need to have that access to information and quality prenatal care every step of the way. When you first decide I'm going to be sexually active, when you first decide I want to get pregnant, to make sure that you and your baby survive and thrive.
Thank you for that insightful answer. Joy, you're up next.
Delegate Carol Foy, do you think we should focus our attention on low-income communities to help improve the health of women and infants, for example, by increasing the scope of pregnancy centers? What do you think a solution would be?
So I do think that expanding centers would be beneficial, along with a number of other effective measures. So I was born and raised in Petersburg, Virginia. And for those of you who don't know, Petersburg has one of the highest child poverty rates, had one of the highest teen pregnancy rates, rates of unaccredited schools at one point. And so I was able to see a lot of the disparities up close. And I saw a lot of the systemic and historical inequities in our healthcare system, education system, in our economy, in our environment. So when I came to the House of Delegates, on day one, I've been fighting for these issues. So one of the first things that I wanted to address was reducing the Black maternal mortality rate. So you do that by bringing forth smart solutions and not false promises. And so I got busy working with Kenda from Birth in Color and a lot of other doulas of color to really try to address and get to the real issue of why is it that because of the amount of melanin in my skin, I am 3 times more likely to die during childbirth or postpartum. Being Black is an actual risk factor when you're talking about giving birth, and that is absolutely absurd. It has to do with the reason that we are not believed, we are not seen, and we are not heard. And so I put in a bill that Senator Locke was referencing to make doulas, especially doulas of color, covered by Medicaid. These are the women who need the help the most. They need an advocate. They need access to information. They need people that they can go to and say, how can I navigate the healthcare system? What is normal and natural and what isn't? And they need someone to help give them culturally competent care, because this is what it's really about. And I applaud the administration for addressing the implicit bias that is inherent in the medical field, like many other fields. So that's part of the solution. But making doulas accessible to low-income women of color has proven to be the most effective thing across the country to reduce the Black maternal mortality rate. So that's what bringing forth smart solutions to address these problems look like. Also, in order to affect the infant mortality rate, especially for children of color, my babies were born at 22 weeks. 22 weeks. And so the point of viability is 24 weeks. And so I remember having a conversation with the doctor, and he said, math is real simple. Your babies are 22 weeks. The point of viability is 24. These babies aren't going to make it. So the best we can do for you is wrap them in a blanket, hand them to you, and you can watch them as they pass away. And I said, not today, and not these children. And so I wanted heroic efforts to ensure that they were able to survive, and not only survive, but thrive. And one of the things that helped that was access to breast milk. And so breast milk isn't covered by insurance or Medicaid, and many people don't know that. So the wealthy have access to giving their children the food and nutrients and everything they need in order to survive, not just succeed in life, but to make it actually to show up in the earth, in the earth and the way that they are. And we don't have simple insurance to cover that. And so putting in a bill to ensure that in Virginia, we put forth the study to say this is something we need. This is something that's necessary and that we can definitely afford. And it's just about having the willpower to do it. So those are the practical things that I'm putting forward to ensure that we help mothers through pregnancy, specifically mothers of color. We're helping children survive and to make it. And also championing the Medicaid expansion with every woman on this panel. We took up the charge to ensure that 400,000 Virginians can have access to affordable health care. And the majority of the people who need it the most are the people who look like the women on this panel. And so that's what making change looks like and standing up for the people in the community.
Thank you so much. That was an amazing answer. Genesis, it's your turn to close out this category.
Okay, so Senator Locke, you've already talked a little bit about some of the policy changes you've made with the delegate in regards to how with maternal and child health systems. But how do you think health systems can be more on top of maternal and child wellness? And what other policy changes would you like to see to improve this?
I think one of the other things that we need to ensure that we are supporting our programs like Healthy Families, Smart Beginnings, Healthy Start. Those have all been very successful programs that have ensured that Black and Brown mothers are supported as they go into their pregnancies and as the children are born, that they are being supported. Just prenatally and after the child is born. And one of the successes of healthy families is that the mother is supported until that child is ready to go to kindergarten. And unfortunately, those are programs that I saw the funding cut when Democrats weren't in charge. But in Hampton, that was one of the programs that was so successful, the city decided to take over funding it. So it is programs like that where the viability is necessary, because it is those type of programs that will continue to reduce infant mortality and maternal mortality.
Wow. Okay. Thank you so much for giving us expounding on that. Any additional comments from any of our other legislators? Sorry.
Yeah, I want to highlight one other thing. It's not just for given to when she's pregnant or giving birth, also the workplace. We did this Worker Fairness Act, which requires employers to provide reasonable accommodations for pregnant and lactating mothers, because too often, most of our policies were created at a time when women were expected to stay home, have babies, and do nothing else. And one of the other family-friendly policies we need to have is a holistic view that recognizes that mothers now have to work. And so that is a very important bill that is going to help a lot of mothers that takes effect tomorrow. But we also needed to make changes to allow our schools to allow pregnant or lactating mothers to be able to pump just at the school day. And it is very important. The reason it is very important you have more women in office is because, let me tell you, when I carried that bill and had to explain to a subcommittee of men why a teacher who shows up to school at 6 a.m. can't just wait until her break at 1 to pump, let's just say they got a little uncomfortable when I explained what happens when you wait that long to pump. And they very quickly passed that bill. But had I not been there, had Delegate Carol Foy not been there with me to explain why these workplace accommodations are so important, had Senator Locke not been there, we often push our male counterparts to understand you have to address these, because it is not our job to just sit home, take care of the children, feed you when you come home. you need to accommodate us in the workplace, you need to do it now.
Ooh, goosebumps. You guys can't see them, but oh, they're there. Thank you for sharing that. Over to you, Kayla, to kick off our discussion on the Equal Rights Amendment.
Thank you. Senator Locke, we have another question for you. For those watching, may you please explain why the Equal Rights Amendment is so important and why language on gender equality in laws and policies is so critical?
Okay, Equal Rights Amendment. I have a few years on my colleagues. To tell you exactly how many years I have on my colleagues, in 1972, when the Equal Rights Amendment was first proposed, and you babies weren't even thought of, I was a senior in high school and about to go into my freshman year of college. This is only 7 years out from the passage of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. So this is how very new all of this was. So the Equal Rights Amendment had just been proposed. And as an 18-year-old, the 26th Amendment had only been in place for 1 year. So I was able to register to vote as an 18-year-old. 1 year out from the passage of that amendment, 7 years out from the Voting Rights Act. So here I am, I'm thinking, you know, this little Black girl has, you know, some voting rights, poll tax has been eliminated, able to register to vote as an 18-year-old. And now here's this Equal Rights Amendment trying to give me some rights as a woman. Also in my hometown of Jackson, Mississippi, was Alice Walker as an artist in residence she had been at Jackson State University and at this school where I'm about to enter, Tougaloo College. So I had come of age at the tail end of the civil rights movement, the Black Power movement. So I am a radical feminist, you know, not your little march and, you know, turn the other cheek type of civil rights activists. So I'm out there at the very beginning stages of supporting passage of the Equal Rights Amendment from the very beginning. So my idea of equal rights for women and gender equality in the early 1970s, for this radical Black womanist feminist was, okay, now's the time. So I was advocating way back then. So I was happy to, along with Senator McClellan and so many others, to patron Senate Bill 1 for passage of the Equal Rights Amendment in 2020, and it passed. And with Delegate Carol Foy's House Bill 1, it passed, and we got it done this year with Virginia being the 38th state. So why is it important? Because so many Americans tend not to see gender discrimination when it's hidden in plain sight. Because so many statistics show that women only make 80% of men when they do equal work. They have higher loads of education debt than men. They're incarcerated at higher rates than men, and at a much faster pace than men. Women are more likely to be sentenced for self-defense in comparison to men, and are more likely to sit in jail than men. And so that's why gender equality and policies are so important, and why the ERA became such an absolute necessity, and why it was so important for us to get that done this year. And so that's why I was so excited to be a part of this movement.
Well, thank you very much.
Then and now.
Thank you. Joy, the follow-up is yours.
Senator McClellan, the ERA was ratified through the efforts of you all and other hardworking women and officials. In fact, you were the chief patron of the resolution in the Senate. Have you noticed any changes in the government since its ratification in Virginia? And what would you plan to do with it if you became governor?
So first of all, the ERA ratification is one step in a very long process. And I want to take you back to how our Commonwealth and how our country were founded, because it's really important to understand just how long of a struggle this has been. So you learned a lot of dates in school. You learned that in 1619, we had the first representative government. That was by white men who came here on a business venture and then created a government with themselves at the top. The first Africans and the first women who came here were then put in a position to serve those men. The first women that came here were recruited as wives who had no rights. Whatever property and whatever rights they had became their husbands the minute they got married. And so you have to recognize that's the hierarchy that our country was founded on, despite the ideals of life, liberty, and equality for all. We've been fighting to make we the people, both men and women, ever since. But just because we ratify the ERA, we cannot stop there. I will remind you that the 14th Amendment and the 15th Amendment that passed during Reconstruction were the beginning of the fight for equality for African Americans and for voting rights, not the end. It took 96 years after the passage of the 14th Amendment until the Civil Rights Act of 1964 truly gave that amendment teeth. It took about the same time before the Voting Rights Act of 1965 gave teeth to the 15th Amendment. And so this has been a long struggle, but we can't say now we've passed the amendment and we're done. And that's why it was so important and why Delegate Carol Foy and I put in the Pregnant Worker Fairness Act now, because we said it's not going to be another 96 years before we pass the laws that start to unravel the patriarchy that was created 400 years ago. And we see it every day. I put in the Domestic Worker Bill of Rights that would extend to domestic workers unemployment compensation, minimum wage, workers' comp, and anti-discrimination. Right now, they're excluded from all of those. And what I saw was the first step was we had to convince people that domestic work, which is primarily done by women, used to be for free, now for low wages, that work should be valued and that work was the foundation of our economy. We saw that like even now in 2020, that is an uphill battle. So what we saw, the way we saw a change in government though, is we are now empowered to begin the next steps of the battle. And I have to say, standing up on the Senate floor after Senator Locke, because she was co-chief patron of the bill with me, after she spoke on the bill and I spoke on the bill, looking up at the dais and saying the words, "Madam President," to Louise Lucas, the first African-American woman president of the Senate, I move passage of the Equal Rights Amendment. That was the most empowering phrase I have said in my 15 years in the legislature. And once that passed, we knew whether, no matter what happens in Washington, we have now empowered an entire generation of girls and women to say, This fight is not going to be left to our children and our children's children. We are picking up the mantle. It's not going to be 96 years before we put this amendment into action to have true equality, I should say equity, for men and women in Virginia.
Thank you so much for that answer. Genesis, you're up next.
All right, Delegate Carol Foy, I know what the question I'm about to give you, I know, I wrote this question, and you could talk about it for a long time. You could probably write a dissertation on this one as well, but I also know that you can be short and sweet, so I'm going to give you a chance to pick which one. I'll let you decide. But the question is, you were the chief patron, last time I said this, I said Patreon, so I said it right this time, patron in the House of Delegates. What encouraged you to join the movement to ratify the ERA, and what was the most difficult part about getting the ERA ratified? And what would you plan to do to make sure Virginia honors the ERA even before it's recognized in the Constitution?
Awesome. Thank you for that question. So I decided to carry the Equal Rights Amendment because I remember sitting in my high school JRTC classroom in Petersburg, Virginia, and watching the Virginia Military Institute decision on TV. See, VMI is one of the top military colleges in this country, and they spent millions of dollars to keep women out of its doors. And I'll never forget that the men in the class said things like, women don't belong, our brains are smaller, we are inferior, we need to know our place, we should not go to military academy because we will be a distraction to men. And I remember hearing Justice Ginsburg say, women can do all things, if given the opportunity. And I agreed. Because my grandmother, who raised me in Petersburg, told me I have no limitations except for the limitations that I put on myself. So I remember looking at all the men in that class and saying, I'm going to go to VMI because I'm just as smart and powerful and capable as any man in this room. And I meant it. And it was at that time that my best friend, he was going to go to West Point. And he walked up to me and he said, well, I'm going to go with you when you go to VMI because I want to be there to watch you when you fail. Oh. Because even though we are friends, don't forget, I'm still female and therefore to him and many men inferior. So I looked at him and said, challenge accepted. So he went to VMI, so did I, and another male in our class. And when they got their head shaved bald, so did I. And when they put on a man's uniform, they gave me a man's uniform. And for years, I marched, sweat, and bled beside over 1,000 male cadets, and they all knew my name. But I'm here to tell you that out of the other 2 men who went with me to VMI, that I am the only one of us to walk across that Virginia Military Institute stage.
Oh.
Thank you. I know what sex discrimination looks like. I know what it feels like. I've seen it. I lived with it. I've eaten dinner with it. And I wanted to eliminate it because I didn't want any other young girl to feel those same feelings of being told what she can and can't do, that there's a place in this world for you. And it's to the back of men. And so I knew that I wanted to carry it. And when I decided to carry it, I locked arms up with Advocate Eileen Davis and VA Ratify ERA and Lisa Sales and so many of the other wonderful women advocates who've been fighting for this for so long, including Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, including League of Women Voters and ERA Coalition, ERA Now. I mean, just so many orgs that came together because I knew I stood on the shoulders of giants like Senator Locke, who came before me fighting for this before I was born. Senator Locke said that. I didn't say that. So I knew the significance of it because we will never get equal pay for equal work until we get the Equal Rights Amendment. We will never end sex discrimination until we have the Equal Rights Amendment. And every little girl, 165 million women and girls were waiting to see what Virginia was doing because their rights as human beings equal to men had rested upon our shoulders. Very rarely what you do has an effect across the country and reverberates that way. And very rarely can you do something that will affect the United States Constitution. But you ask what was one of the biggest hindrances. One of the biggest hindrances was it's been carried before, but it had never passed in Virginia. And that's when, along with Eileen Davis and VA Ratified ERA, we decided to educate and excite people about the ERA in a real way. So we did a bus tour throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Remember that.
And it was amazing. And women and men came out of everywhere just talking about what it meant to them and how they've been fighting for decades. And so to help lead that charge here in Virginia, because I'm going to be honest with you, not everyone was signed up. And I'm not just talking about Republicans. People told me it was a dead issue. It was a waste of time. None of the committees have changed, so it would never pass. But it didn't matter because it was that important and that significant. And I was willing to do the work. And so that's how we were able to galvanize and get it passed. And now my focus is on flipping the Senate so we can finally remove the timeline, because there is no deadline to equality. And once we remove that timeline, then that takes one of the most substantive arguments away from us not having full ratification in 2 years, where women's rights, constitutional equality can finally be enshrined. And so that's what I'm busy doing.
Okay, I was just about to say, I know you can say a lot, because I know I could say a lot about this too. Not, again, you have some years on me and experience, but I don't mean that in like in your old way. I mean that in like your awesome kind of way. But yeah, we do have to move on. I'm gonna let Kayla close out for our little break, but she can tell you more about that. So, Kayla.
Our next panel topic is going to be the importance of women running for office, but it's going to be after this quick 3-minute break. So run to the bathroom or stick with us during this energy-raising Shake Your Booty to Beyonce break. Woo woo.
Jesus.
Some of them may think they freak this like we do, but no.
Woo! Okay, so this next topic is the importance of women running for office. Senator Locke, it is well known that Black and brown women are one of the smallest demographics in the Senate and higher office. And even though women, as a whole, are more than half of the population, they make up less than a quarter of those in office. For younger generations, why is it so important to have female role models and women in office?
Okay, very good question. My go-to place to find out any data on women in public office is the Center for American Women in Politics, which is at Rutgers University. They collect all of this great information and data from the federal level to the local level. And even though it's always kind of disheartening to see the numbers, it's always good data. And the numbers for African American women in elective office nationwide, from the federal level to the local level, is quite dismal. In 2019, there were 307 Black women serving in state legislatures. That's about 4.1%. That's every state across the board. There were only 9 women serving in leadership roles. And by leadership roles, I mean like a majority leader, a minority leader, or any role like that. Senator Lucas made the 10th woman serving in that kind of a leadership role when she was elected as the president pro tem of the Virginia Senate in this past January. So it's important to have women to serve in those positions because they become the positive role model for young women like yourselves to see as the guideposts. One of the things that Senator McClellan said when she was talking about the Equal Rights Amendment was that she could move by saying, Madam President, because Senator Lucas was standing in the well that day as the president pro tem presiding over the Senate that day, and say, I move passage of Senate Bill 1 for the Equal Rights Amendment that day. And that was very significant to have her standing there with the Equal Rights Amendment being passed on that day for that historic moment. To have an African-American woman presiding over the Senate of Virginia for that historic moment. And I could just imagine all of the young women out there seeing and hearing at that particular point in time, having that happen with Senator Lucas presiding over the Senate that day. So that's why it's important to have African American women being in the positions that we are in elective office. And even in 2020, there's Senator Lucas, Senator McClellan, and myself serving in the Senate of Virginia.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for that answer. It's over to you now, Genesis. You're on mute. You're on mute.
Oh my gosh, you guys, that is not the first time that's happened. So we're going to make this a little fantastic and a little weird. So we're going to do a 90-second countdown of everything. I know that seems like a lot, but I'm giving myself 90 seconds as well. So I have to speed round 2. Okay, so Senator McClellan, one of the issues with gaps in representation of women in office is the fact that statistically, women are less likely to even think about running for office. Why is this, and are there ways to alleviate this? I'm particularly interested because of you and a certain somebody's, governor race. Okay, timer starts now.
Often people say that women have to be asked to run and men just run. And that's true because men have seen so many role models. They just think it's natural if they have any ambition that they have to be in office and running things. Women, and Black women in particular, have been doing the work and cleaning up other people's messes for 400 years, but we have to be asked to come to the front we shouldn't have to ask anymore. We should take our rightful place in leadership. And a lot of times women wait until after they get married, after they have kids, after they've worked, retire, and then they run. And for many women, that was their path. I was the opposite. I ran for office, then I got married, then I had kids. And bringing that experience is incredibly important for a lot of the reasons we've talked about already. But we just need to stop waiting to be asked. We can do this, and we just need to take our rightful place in the front and not wait for someone to invite us in the front.
All right. Oh my gosh, you did that in less than, I don't know if you can see that, but you have 57 seconds. You are good to go. All right. Thank you so much. And the next one is you to ask, Kayla.
Thank you. Delegate Carol Foy, we've noticed that when women lose elections and campaigns, they are less likely to run for office again, though I don't think you've lost any campaigns. Can you tell us what motivates you to stay in politics even when you have political setbacks, which I know all of you ladies have experienced, whether personal or professional, like trying to get a bill passed?
Absolutely. So women just have to continue to run. I mean, we're in it for the right reasons. We're standing up for our communities. We're standing up for our families in a real substantive way. I mean, women have to be at the table where the decisions are being made about our lives, about our children, about our schools, and about broadband and infrastructure and transportation. We can have those conversations, and we don't have to be invited. We just kind of have to kick in the door, and that's what it's really about. And when you have setbacks, I mean, setbacks can just be a setup for a comeback. That's how I look at it. And one of the things, my husband, jokes about is like, when are people going to, understand? One of the worst things people can do is tell you no, or that there's something out there that you can't do, because that's when I really shine, right? And so whether it's BMI, whether it's being a public defender, whether it's running for delegate while pregnant with twins, in a campaign where my opponent had every major legislation endorsement and outraised me 4-1 and still having more votes than our statewide electeds. It's all about being in it for the right reasons, finding mentorship out there, and putting your head down and just running your race, no matter what happens. And if you get knocked down, come back bigger and better than ever.
Thank you so much for that. Joy, you're up next.
I'm going to pass this one to Genesis to start our next category.
All right, so I'm going to ask these questions like a rap god. I don't know if you guys know that reference, so you guys better listen because I'm going to speed through it. All right, Senators, this topic is human trafficking, just so you know. Senators Locke and McClellan, what is the importance of the work you and the Virginia legislature has done to combat human trafficking? Do you have any plans to introduce any bills? And 90 seconds for both. One of you guys can start. I'll give it to whoever.
There have been any number of pieces of legislation that have dealt with human trafficking. As a matter of fact, just this past session, I did one that dealt specifically with women who have been trafficked and got caught up in the trafficking and were accused and convicted of prostitution. So I introduced a bill that would have those records expunged because through no fault of their own, they were convicted of prostitution. But unfortunately, the bill was sent to the Crime Commission for study. So that's where it is right now. So hopefully we can deal with that through the Crime Commission and have that particular piece of legislation addressed, because these are women who, they were trafficked and as a consequence were convicted for prostitution. So they need to have their records expunged.
Yeah, similarly, we have tried to have an affirmative defense for prostitution when someone has been trafficked, because too often what happens is these women are re-victimized, they're arrested and charged in order to get at the pimp or someone else up the food chain. But too often they're the ones who suffer for it, and that just shouldn't be the case. So I put that bill in a few years ago. It wasn't able to get through, but we're going to keep pushing it until we get that affirmative defense in place as well.
Oh my gosh, all of you guys are amazing. All right, this question is specifically for Delegate General, I was about to call your whole name, Jennifer Carol Foy. All right, you are a very confident lady, but we notice that sex traffickers often target those who have this lack of self-confidence. What advice can you give to women so that they can safeguard this?
Absolutely. It's about knowing that the predators are out there and that they do target people oftentimes who don't come from strong family bonds, who are on the outs with their family and friends, and who are having some type of, oftentimes, mental health emergencies themselves, whether it's depression or whatever may have you. So one of the ways to combat it is to really stay connected with the family, continue to voice what is right and what's wrong. Have self-awareness and know what you want in life and go for that. Because if you're laser focused on what you have going in front of you, then there aren't any room for distractions. And for someone else to come in and tell you they like you, or you're this, or you're that, or you're pretty, and come ride with them, and then you end up somewhere and doing things that you never anticipated. So it's about knowing your own power and standing in your strength, and always taking ownership of yourself and your body, and knowing that you're one in yourself, and can't no one take that away from you. So show no signs of weakness, and continue to stay focused on your goals and moving forward at all times.
Woo, strength. Okay, I'm going to pass over for the next category to Commissioner Kayla.
Thank you.
Sorry, Kayla. I just want to warn you, I'm over here getting ready for the rally tonight, and we have a hard stop at 6:15. So we're gonna just go to the wrap up if you can, and maybe just do a last fire question or answer. So I'm gonna go back to getting ready, but I'm so excited for tonight. Thank you, ladies.
Okay, I have the final question that I can go ahead and ask all of our lovely panelists. Okay, so as female legislators and important role models for all of us, what do you do to make certain young women have the help and mentorship they need? And how can we make certain to do more of this so that young women excel and live up to their true potential?
Well, I can go ahead and go first. One of the things I've been doing is trying to build a pipeline of kids going to college from Petersburg, Virginia. And whether they go to VMI or they go to another institute of higher learning, my goal is to ensure as many young girls get educated as we possibly can make happen. And I try to direct as many women to law school, because it changes the way that you think and you see the world. It allows you to travel and have mobility and have access to the middle class or higher in ways that a lot of women don't understand or know about. And so my job is to build that pipeline for women coming behind me. My life has been about blazing trails and opening doors where they were closed previously, but it will be unjust if I don't open them wider for the women and girls coming behind me. So that's what I would say I've been doing.
And I try to go around to the various high schools, talking to young people and trying to get them to understand that the world is your oyster. And one of the things that I always talk about is the fact that, look at me, I was supposed to be a statistic, coming out of public housing, and you don't have to be a statistic. I was not, you don't have to be either. And I also tried to provide opportunities in my Senate office, both in the district and in Richmond, to give young ladies an opportunity to see up close and personal what it is like to make public policy, be a part of the public policy making process, so that they can learn from the inside what it is like to be in government. I did that when I was in local government, and I'm doing it now when I'm in state government, so that to not just be a role model, so young ladies can see up close and personal, this is what it's like, and this is what I want you to do in your life.
Awesome.
So I would agree. You show up and you show yourself as a role model, but more importantly, you invite young women to come with you and have a seat at the table, whether it's supporting organizations that give them the tools to do that, like Boys and Girls Clubs or Girls for Change, whether it's bringing them in as ambassadors or interns or young staff. Like, pleasure to have Joy in my office, creating pipelines to expose them to public service, being a lawyer or being an elected official themselves. More importantly, be a mentor, be a source. Don't assume that somebody just wants to follow your path. Help them find their path, help them find their passion, and give them the courage and be the wind beneath their wings to help them go and get the experience they need to make their dreams come true. And don't be afraid to take someone who on paper doesn't have the experience, but you know if they're given an opportunity, they're going to prove themselves. And so those are some of the things that I've done and continue to do.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. What a great conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, remember these names. I couldn't be more impressed with these young women, and I would sincerely like to thank our elected officials, Senator Mamie Locke, Senator Jennifer McClellan, Delegate Jennifer Carroll Foy, for taking time out of your schedules to share your thoughts and ideas with us on such important topics that are important to women, to children, to families, to strengthening communities. I look forward to working with you all as you continue to lead on these critical issues. Thank you all for spending time with us tonight for our remarkable Black Women Lead panel. Special thank you and shout out from the treetops to Catherine, Robin, and Stair. Phenomenal job on this summit. One of these two ladies just could be the first ever female governor of Virginia and the first ever Black female governor in the United States of America, if we all have anything to say about it, right?
Woohoo!
Yes, and having just achieved ratification of the ERA, Virginia can be on the right side of history once again. Look out, sweet Virginia. Here come the women. Genesis, sign us out.
All right. Yes, thank you. Please stay with us for our Women's Summit 2020 finale, which will be held at 7 to 8 p.m. You won't want to miss it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was the best ending ever. Oh my gosh, I loved it. And you know what? Really, thank you, ladies. And Lisa, what an amazing panel. Senators, legislators, everybody. I just am so excited. So please join us at 7. We are going to kick it off and we're going to end the rally tonight. And we're very excited. Woo! All right. Thank you all. See you soon. See you in the room. Bye, Kayla. Thank you. Bye, Genesis.
Bye.
Bye.